Hello, everyone, and welcome to DC Talks. I am your host, Drew Kreisman. With me is my brother, Ira Kreisman. And on this episode, we finally conclude our conversation on the 1995 Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie. A little bit of a gap in there. Not going to repeat it for everybody who's probably heard the disclaimer several times, but it is the time of year where we get a bit busier. Doesn't matter. We're back into the Power Rangers. We're going to finish talking about this movie and maybe a little bit about the new anniversary special that they did that Ira watched and that I have seen half of on Netflix. But first, when last we left our heroes, they were coming back to Earth to save the day, because that's what Power Rangers do.
Sorry. You ready for me to jump in?
Yeah.
Okay. So back on Earth, the Ectomorphicon Titans are attacking the city of Angel Grove, located somewhere in New Zealand, California.
Right. That was quite the sentence you just said. That was a lot of things.
Yeah, and they're giant silvery machines with the purple ooze flowing through them. The boys are back in town. Boys are back in town. Song plays.
No.
Lots of pop culture, music references throughout this movie. I think the music choices, the pop music choices, were all pretty darn good.
Yeah, me too. It's one of the best things about the movie, for sure.
We get a scene where Zordon is lying in his bed of crystals and he's trying to get Alpha to contact the Rangers so that he can help. I don't know what he thinks he's going to do, but he's going to not give up.
Bleeding out.
And you were talking about how before the Power Rangers left for Phaedos, that it kind of seemed like Zordon had given up.
Yeah, which I didn't really like and thought was weird. It's kind of like when there's some versions of Professor X that they'll have do that, and I'm like, no, he can be a little weaker sometimes because he can't be, all strength, all powerful, all wise, all knowing all the time. That's not interesting either, but I don't really like it when those characters sort of give in or give up.
So in his not giving up in this case, Zordon, Alpha talks about, well, I can try this and that to try to get a hold of him. But what he gets is the news report. And there's a reporter saying, these giant monsters are attacking. Where are the Power Rangers? And of course, we know they are on their way. So we switch now to nighttime. Mordant isn't here. Instead, it's Ivan Ooze and Goldar standing in this like a space needle kind of thing.
Right, yeah.
And Ivan Ooze employs his ability to smell teenagers, which again is not appropriate.
God. This is a more innocent time, 1995. God.
So they teleport in. It's street level. They're in their Power Rangers suits, and they look around and they see the giant monsters, and so they immediately call for their new Ninja Zords. Excellent. Good call.
Yeah.
And it's super cool, and they teleport up and they end up in the cockpits, and we get these, for the first time to my recollection, CG Zords.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I? Mm-hmm. I try to be
go ahead.
Really as positive as I can be about a lot of this stuff, and as I've tried to mention, my bar is pretty low, especially when I go in knowing how silly it is. But even to my recollection, this looked worse than I remembered. Like, this was just it was so bad. I hate them. I don't want to. There's things conceptually I like about these Zords, but just looking at them when I rewatched this movie, some things held up better than I remembered, some a little bit worse, but this was just like, man, I did not remember these looking this bad. And they're tough to look at. All of them. The Ivan Ooze ones too, his ectomorphic Blakaka Titans and whatever else. Like, they went with like 1995 CGI, and maybe it was the best that was available to them at the time. Reminded me of that old reboot show we used to watch.
Oh, sure.
Goofy looking, man. Beast Wars and stuff, It's just like, oof, this is not good.
So in that interview retrospective thing I was talking about an episode or two ago, the director says, we just did not have the technology for CG the way we do today. And so I almost wonder, Would it have been better if they just gone the regular tokusatsu route and had people in suits?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think for that time, and it's something that happened to a lot of movies you go back and watch from that time, that because CGI was like a new tool and there were a lot of cool, fun things you could do with it that you couldn't ever do before, people were doing them, but they just haven't aged well. They don't. Some of them looked horrible at the time, but especially in hindsight, they don't hold up. I will say that's one of the cool things, the great things about modern Power Rangers. To anyone who's still interested in the concept and liked the reboot, which we've talked a little bit about, that I think they're doing another reboot because people weren't as into that one as they'd hoped. I don't know. I thought Elizabeth Banks did a great job, but
yeah, I love that movie. But
and one of the things that I think was great about it is, again, it gives that, it's kind of cathartic for people like us that really enjoy the concept, but then you watch something like this, you go, man, it's hard to convince people how cool the giant robots fighting the giant monsters are when it looks this goofy. But in that movie, it looks phenomenal. You're like, yes, this is how it should feel, like the Zords or whatever, right? These larger-than-life things. Now we have the technology to do it. But in 1995, they look like weird bugs. It's weird.
Yeah, and everything's too smooth and shiny, and the light's coming off it in the wrong way.
Yeah,
it's kind of a bummer. Conceptually, though, a giant monster fighting a giant robot in a city is super cool.
Yeah.
And you know what? They had built that city in miniature so they could move the camera around. But that meant that they had to restrict the movements of the CGI monsters and robots and stuff to the physical part of the miniatures. So they kind of boxed themselves in there. But like I was saying, and this is based upon what the director said, they tried to use every different kind of special effect they had access to. So it's not just CGI, but also miniatures, but also practical effects, but also wires, but also guys in suits with those rock monsters.
Right.
But also Martin Freeman in this ridiculously wonderful getup to be Ivan Ooze, right? So they did a mix of things, and I do think that ultimately it mostly works out pretty well.
Right.
So we cut back to Fred. Remember Fred, the little kid?
Sure.
So he goes to Ernie's. Not the juice bar, but Ernie's. Okay, fine.
Fine. Multiverse.
He knows that the parents have to leap to their dooms.
Right.
So he goes there and he has to have this big speech where he convinces all the kids of Angel Grove, or at least the ones here in this particular restaurant, that Ivan is taking over the planet.
Right,
and he's got our parents.
Right.
And Ivan is evil. And if you don't come with me right now, our parents are going to die. You've got to believe me.
Yeah.
And also Bulk and Skull are here for some reason.
Sure.
I got to say, of all the characters in Power Rangers, Bulk and Skull have one of the wildest and most satisfying arcs.
Sure, yeah.
Because at the end of Power Rangers in Space, they've got, all of Angel Grove again. It's, 30 people. It's 30 extras in Bulk and Skull. Which one of you are the Power Rangers, says Astronema. Tell me right now or I'm going to kill everybody. And Bulk stands up first.
Yeah.
And it's great.
Yeah.
And I'm a Power Ranger.
Yeah, I am Spartacus. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And then when the Power Rangers who are still around find like, damn, if Bulk and Skull can stand up to Astronema, we can get up and morph. And they do, and it's great. So anyway, Tommy's Falcon Zord is hit, and he's got to pull out of the battle. The Frog and the Wolf team up to fight one of them. And Aisha gets to say, time to boogie with the bear, and gets to kick ass on one of them. And Rocky jumps down from a building onto another. It's a fun... One of the things about the show that I found frustrating is they would almost always go straight to the Megazord and not give each individual Zord an opportunity to do a thing.
Sure, right.
So they do that some here. Kim goes after Ivan. Kim's not messing around. She goes straight to that Space Needle thing and takes a shot at him, and he zaps her or like gets her in a tractor beam or something. Ivan says, here comes the cute little Pink Ranger. And Goldar goes, oh, you think she's cute too, huh? And Ivan gives him such a disappointed look.
It's kind of great. Reminded me a little bit too of the Turks in Final Fantasy VII, like
sure,
kind of admitting that they're crushing on the good guys a little bit.
So Tommy comes in and shoots missiles at one, and they blow it up, and then Ivan essentially possesses the other one. So it's a giant Ivan wearing Ectomorphicon Titan armor against the Ninja Megazord power now, and the theme music kicks in, and it's super cool, and they have this big duel. Kim gets to be front and center in the Megazord, like she's the one driving, she's the one leading the charge.
Right.
And at that point, other than Billy, those are the two who have been on the team the longest. So it would make sense for her to take a leadership role. So I really like that. The monorail is broken. The kids who are trying to save their parents take the monorail to the cliff, I guess. So Tommy's got to stretch his Falconzord wings to save the monorail, and then he docks on the Falconzord.
The first of several physics nonsense things that are about to happen, by the way. That is the Falconzord has a monorail track on its back that can just
the great power.
That's right. I'm with you. I'm not sure what that's got to do with the nonsense with the hose that's about to happen. But keep going.
All right. So
actually, maybe the dumbest thing in this movie is the hose.
Right. We're about to get there. So Tommy's Zord latches onto the back of the Ninja Megazord, and now they're the Ninja Mega Falconzord, I think. And they fight some more, and the zombie parents leap to our doom. Leap to our doom. And so the kids stand in front and try to push them back from the cliff, and Fred recruits Bulk and Skull, who don't say anything for these few scenes. They don't. The guys
heroic actions, no words.
Right. So the guys playing these characters felt like they were underutilized in this movie, and they were. So they had the production of the movie took so long that they had to shoot some of the shows down there in Australia. So to sort of compensate for being underutilized in the movie, they got to direct or produce or something some of the episodes down there. So that's fun. Apparently, also they would show up on set while the hero actors were working and give them hell.
Mess with them. Fantastic.
Are you guys working today? That's cool. We went to the beach. Anyway, so they follow Fred. Billy remembers, hey, there's a comet. Let's go to space. So they leap.
I am scientist.
They leap to go off and do space stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, Fred is lifted up in this sort of bucket genie lift thing, and he turns the hose on to spray the parents back from leaping to their doom. Drew, what exactly is your problem with this scene?
When I watched it again, it's funny because as I was remembering what was about to happen as he was doing it, and I was like, wait a minute. The physics of this, for the water blaster to be powerful enough that it knocks back a literal army of people, but also doesn't cause extreme damage or just kill a few of them.
Right.
The idea that it could just be pushing people back with this water cannon and there's an army of zombie parents walking, and it's just, I was like, man, of all the things that are happening right now with the bugs and the comet and the silly CGI and, giant monsters and robots, this is the silliest one. This is it. This is why.
Right.
What purpose does this serve? I guess the little kid had to do something heroic. He had to help. And this is what they came up with. But they couldn't have come up with literally anything else.
When your characters have superpowers, when they do silly things like what's about to happen, it's different when you're in a brightly colored costume and you have the power of the morphin grid or the ninjetti or whatever.
Right.
There's no reason, like you said, that this should have rescued anybody without hurting people.
Right.
I guess, if we take it at face value, or if we take it as sort of a metaphor, then as Fred getting to be heroic in a keeping his cool in a stressful situation, that part makes sense.
Yeah, that I like, and I like Bulk and Skull helping, and all of that. But it's just, again, the getting there of it and the doing of it. It's why this? There could have been any number of ways you could have come up with for him to stop them. Shooting a water cannon is...
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, the Power Rangers in their Megazord fly out of the atmosphere and past the Moon Palace. Zeta and Red?
Zeta and
Red. I'm leaving it.
Yep.
They say, I hope the Rangers put that lousy low life out of my misery.
Yeah.
Go Rangers! Go Rangers! Go Rangers! From their little snow globe.
You almost wanted them to start singing this song. Go, go.
Yes, excellent. And then I think this is actually a pretty cool scene, and I like how they set this up at the beginning. Like you said, there's some goofy storytelling. But also, they set up the comet back at the jump, the skydiving scene. Here comes the comet, which has a fiery trail in space, by the way. Mm-hmm. Again, whatever.
Yeah.
Ivan Ooze has what, to me, is actually a pretty intimidating line. They stop in space.
Sure.
Ivan tackles them and says, I'm going to rip you apart Zord by Zord, which is kind of intense.
Yeah.
But they get in just the right spot, and Aisha break in case of emergency. Somebody says, what are you doing? And she says, taking care of business. And she punches the button, and the Megazord knees Ivan right in the nuts.
Wait, okay.
Hey, morphological beings have nuts, Drew.
How big
Wolfman's got nards.
You know what? I don't want to. If they're 4 stories tall, I'm not following this train of thought any further. I am out on Zord nuts. Though I think that might have been a cereal you could eat when you were a kid.
So they Ooze sort of does the thing that happens when you get kneed in the nuts, and he tumbles into the path of the comet, which hits him, and he explodes.
Right.
The spell is broken. The parents are saved. Bulk almost hugs Skull, but no homo, I guess. Only handshakes.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I kind of would have preferred the hug.
Right.
But it was the 90s, and I mean, we've already had this discussion about how Power Rangers was progressive in some ways, but David Yost got bullied off the set.
Yeah.
Though I will say, in the most recent season, there is a young queer couple that's really quite cute. Yeah. So the day is saved. Ivan Ooze has been destroyed.
They murdered that guy. Power Rangers don't usually do that.
They didn't. Okay, so we had this conversation with Captain America.
I know I said the word murder, but
Yeah, they definitely killed him because he was a person, and he is dead now, and they did it on purpose. But it was in combat.
Sure. I mean, they kneed him in the nuts and threw him into a meteor or comet or whatever. But yeah.
Right. I don't know. If we're going to ask if Zordon is recruiting child soldiers, can we ask if the Power Rangers are murderers? Like, I don't think they are.
I'm fine with it. No, morally, I think we're 100% fine. It's just that, in general, right, we don't typically see the Power Rangers actually end up, as the word they would use, right, is destroying someone.
Right. A person. It's different when you destroy a monster made of clay.
Oh, yeah, dude. Monsters. Destroy them all day. But it's just kind of interesting. I don't know that I have a deeper, more existential thought on it other than, hey, it's a movie, I guess. You got to kill a guy.
Sure. Yeah. Well, speaking of killed, our heroes get back to the command center, which is totally destroyed, and Zordon is dead.
Oh, man.
He's not moving. So, he's in his bed of crystals in his weird shimmery gray robe, and dude's not breathing, heart is stopped, Zordon is dead. And I got to say, there's some pretty good acting from these guys.
There is. If you can get past the, fake out deaths, which, by the way, some people got to get off a high horse about fake out deaths. Katie and I just watched a thing yesterday that was really down on The Mandalorian over potential fake out deaths. I remember whole big conversations in Final Fantasy VII Remake about fake out deaths. We've talked about it in Final Fantasy IV, and it's like, it doesn't have to be your favorite trope, but if it happens, that doesn't automatically mean that everything is ruined and death has no meaning and your story has no merit, and people gotta chill on that. Sorry, side rant.
Right. As we have said dozens of times, there are other stakes than life and death.
Yeah.
So Tommy is the one who has the epiphany here. With the great power, anything is possible. And I got to say, even now, this scene gets a few tears from me. Yeah. I think it's pretty great. They all stand around Zordon, and they raise their hands, and they connect to the Morphin grid, and they they do what the morphing grid does.
Yeah.
Which is basically whatever you want, so long as your heart is in the right place and you have the will.
Yeah.
And they resurrect Zordon, and I know it's just playing the footage in reverse.
Sure.
But it's a neat effect of the command center coming back together.
It really does. And you can tell what it is, but it's still actually, it looks good. And I enjoy that as well. And you know what this moment reminded me of? Another 90s classic that we've already talked about here.
What's that?
In the Ninja Turtles, when they're out and meditating and end up conjuring up Splinter. Slightly different context, but still the family comes together, closes their eyes, meditates, and conjures their father figure, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm with you. I get emotional. It's like this whole... I'm sitting here going, oh, they just need that guy in the nards and threw him into a comet. The kid was using a water cannon. He would have killed like at least 20 people doing that. But then this happens, and you're like, oh, right, there is like a kind of heart to these stories and this concept, and the idea of Zordon, like I compared him to Professor X earlier, right? It's that similar thing where you're like, these are ideals. These characters stand for ideals that we should all be able to believe in and want to see come back and succeed. And so, it's emotional to see Zordon return.
And I really like this next exchange. Kim says, "We thought that you," and she can't say it.
Yeah.
And then Zordon says, "It is good to see you again, too." Because he also cares for these kids.
Right.
Watching the episodes of season 1, where it really seems like Zordon has no idea what he's doing.
Right.
Those early episodes are all over the place. So it's as much that as anything else.
These kids wandered in here. I'm going to give them nearly unlimited power.
Exactly. But there is sort of this sense that he's looking out for them. Like he's keeping an eye on things. Yeah. He's doing what he can to protect them because he's put them in this position. And so to see that really brought to the fore here, where he cares about these people. They may not be his kids, but they are his responsibility, and he really seems to care about them. And I really like this version of Zordon in this movie, even if he did kind of give up there for a while.
Totally.
We cut to a celebration. Bulk and Skull are absolutely telling a bullshit story about how they took down Ivanus. The line I love best here is, "We could smell death, and death could use a mint." Perfect.
It's pretty good.
No notes.
It's pretty good.
Our heroes are all having dinner at this beautiful outdoor patio restaurant thing.
Sure.
Fred comes up and he's being real modest. "Oh, the Power Rangers did all the work." And Tommy says, "Well, you kept your head in a stressful situation.
Yeah.
That's no bullshit. Well done, kid."
Right.
Or something like that.
He doesn't say that because it's Power Rangers, but yeah.
And Aisha says, "I hear you're in line to be a ranger yourself one of these days." And Fred's like, "You think so?" And then he goes, "Fred Kilman, the Silver Ranger." "No, the Gold Ranger." and there would eventually be a Gold Ranger in Zeo and a Silver Ranger in space. And then, there are Gold and Silver Rangers throughout the history thereof. And that's pretty great. And then the fireworks come on, and that's what dreams are made of.
Oh, your thing too.
Anyway,
thing is the thing that actually plays.
Yeah, well, there's the more 80s, 90s rock, right? Which, again, I love. And then the credits roll, and we get this mid-credit scene where Goldar is sitting on the throne. "I am King Goldar, ruler of the universe." And then Rita and Zed come back, and he's like, "Oh, shit."
Oh, fine.
And then that's the movie.
Again. I love Goldar. Low-key, Goldar has always been one of my favorites. I don't know why. So, and it's funny, too, because that moment at the end there with Fred, like... It's super goofy and kind of, again, one of those things, and I'm sure even I probably rolled my eyes at it at the time when I was a kid. But in hindsight, it reminded me of when we were kids, and we would do that exact same thing of like before those colors existed, right? We were always making up. And gold was, of course, what you would go to because that was the coolest color that we knew of as kids. Gold was what... the shiny money, that was what riches were made of. And so...
Yeah, it's first place.
Yeah, right. First place, all that stuff. So on the one hand, it's very goofy. On the other hand, it kind of reminded me of me as a kid going, I want to be the Gold Ranger, because we did. We kind of all wanted to be a Power Ranger, but we didn't just want to be a Power Ranger. We wanted to be the coolest Power Ranger of all time. So that the movie kind of ends on that note in hindsight, I really enjoy. So that's the end of the Power Rangers movie. 5 out of 5 stars, no notes, cinema. Got snubbed at the Oscars that year.
I do really like this movie.
Yeah.
And I like Power Rangers in general.
Sure.
It's kind of goofy in a lot of ways, but there's some good acting. There's some pretty okay acting.
Bad.
The action is great at times and okay at times.
Bad.
But it is, we talked about the Mario movie recently and said that it feels like it delivers on what Mario is, and it's kind of like the baseline of what we might want out of a Mario movie. And I feel like this movie is the baseline of what I wanted out of a Power Rangers movie. It's a long Power Rangers episode that just sort of ramps everything up. And it could have done some things better, but it could have done a lot of things worse too. And so for that, I really like it. I also like that it kind of introduces the multiverse of Power Rangers in that this long hour-and-a-half episode is clearly not what happens between seasons 2 and 3 of the show.
Right.
Even though they're going to get their ninja powers in season 3. So there's that aspect of it. Yeah, every time I watch it, I enjoy it. I got whatever critiques there are of it, and I'm sure there are plenty, I don't care.
Yeah, outside of some of the things that haven't aged well, I want to do something that you've done a couple of times before, which is just recontextualize something that sounds negative just based on the way you say it. I think the first time I remember you doing this with Final Fantasy X-2 for Final Fantasy Charlie's Angels. And you're like, what about Final Fantasy Charlie's Angels?
Yeah.
It's actually kind of rad. That can sound dope, right? And one of the very few reviews that I found of this movie was from Ebert, of course, at the time, who very dismissively, I think, because he gave it a pretty negative review, said something like, I guess this is the best you could possibly hope for out of a Power Rangers movie, or something like that. I guess this is probably as Power Rangers as it's going to get. So on the one hand, it's awful, but what was I expecting was kind of his take. And I would almost just recontextualize that and say, yeah, it was a Power Rangers movie. What were you expecting? It was very goofy. It was very silly. It also had some pretty fun moments of action and choreography, and some of the actors who are also their own stuntmen, and some great stuff there, and a story that hopefully young people can resonate with a little bit over why the good guys are the good guys because they fight for each other, and the bad guys are the bad guys because they fight for themselves and among each other. And sometimes it's cool to see giant robots fighting monsters. You don't have to overcomplicate it.
Right. Yeah. I also wanted to talk a little bit about what Power Rangers is now.
Yeah.
Because something you said in that first episode, I think it was the first episode, where you said, well, maybe we get back to the WWE eventually, and maybe we should revisit Power Rangers now that we've been away from it for a while.
Right.
And so I did that.
Right.
So since we first started this series that we thought we would finish a month and a half ago.
Right.
So in the last couple of months, I watched the most recent season, Dino Fury, and then I went back to where I left off. So the last season I watched when I was really into it was Dino Thunder. So now I picked up after that season. So I've seen SPD and Mystic Force and Operation Overdrive, and I just started Jungle Fury, and I've started picking up the Boom Studios comics, and I enjoy all of them, for what they are. The comics, they're not chopping people up or anything, but it takes a little more serious note here and there, and we really dive into who these people are and their interactions with each other and their friendships and their frustrations. Sometimes Zordon hasn't told them everything, right? And so they get upset when something shows up, why didn't you tell us? And he's like, well, I was ashamed, and so they delve into some of that. So I've read up through the Shattered Grid storyline, so I know now who the Ranger Hunter is, or the Ranger Slayer, and Lord Drakon and White Trini wears the black dragon armor.
Right.
I read all of that. And then that is reflected in, what's the name of the fighting game that you like?
Yeah, Battle for the Grid.
And then I watched some of the Bat in the Sun Power Rangers stuff. So the Bat in the Sun does like superpower beatdown, I think they call it, where it's superheroes and superpowered characters fighting each other, sort of death battle like.
Sure.
And they had Jason David Frank come in and be the Green Ranger to fight against Scorpion, I think.
Cool.
And they've done some back and forth there. So when Legacy Wars and Battle for the Grid wanted to include a Street Fighter crossover, they got Jason David Frank and one of the Yellow Rangers and a guy to be Ryu and a lady to be Chun-Li. And it's this cool, like, 7-minute short film.
Right.
Where they fight M. Bison, who's being powered up by whichever bad guy. And that's pretty cool, too.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed SPD, even though they're basically superpowered cops fighting off aliens, which is kind of potentially...
Yeah.
They can... So the most messed up thing about SPD is they can determine guilt and pass sentence in the field, but they don't blow anybody up. They don't destroy anybody. They don't kill these aliens. They essentially imprison them.
Yeah.
So at least they're not killing them, but they are sort of like sentencing them in the field.
It can be tough to root for the literal cops these days, but...
Right, but they're also fighting off the vanguard of this invading army.
Right.
So they're not really the fascists. They're fighting off the fascists, but they are still. It's interesting. Yeah, I will say.
Yeah, fair enough.
And then Mystic Force is cool because instead of being ninjas or dinosaurs again, they're wizards. Operation Overdrive, they're essentially these globe-trotting adventure heroes. I just started Jungle Fury. It's a lot of fun. Like it is just Power Rangers. So don't try to make it something it's not.
Right.
But it is more than some people seem to think. And like you said, that heart, that aspirational, enthusiastic, genuinely heroic nature is something that I really enjoy.
Yeah. And quite frankly, it's something that we do need more and more of. Like, it's so easy to be cynical. And I know I do this rant every once in a while, but it really is. I saw a comedian recently on something. I can't even remember who it was, but saying, it's kind of what they want of you, and the they being kind of an all-encompassing cynical power structure kind of throughout the world. And it's better off for people who want to abuse systems if everyone gets cynical and doesn't do anything and doesn't believe in their own power to do good, right? That old quote about the only thing that evil needs to succeed is for good people to do nothing, right? And so at its core, Power Rangers is a story about normal, everyday young people with attitude coming together as a team, dealing with their own stuff as people, and then saving the world. It's the same basic premise, I guess, as the X-Men, except they get to turn into giant robots and stuff, and it's a little goofier. But it is ultimately a premise I'm always going to love and enjoy whenever they reboot it, whatever the next live action one is. As much as I'm bummed that they're not going to continue the Elizabeth Banks stuff, like whatever they do next, I'm going to finish watching this reunion, the Once and Always thing.
Yes.
The way they've dealt with the Trini stuff just in the early going. And again, real stuff, right? To your point, it's not that it's not goofy. I'm watching it with my wife, and she's like, you can kind of tell the people that have kept acting over the years and the people that have normal jobs now. I was like, yeah, you kind of can, but we're not watching it because we wanted to see some award-winning acting in the Power Rangers thing, right? We're here having fun and having a lot of fun with it. But it begins with not just the death of a character, but us kind of having to reconcile with the death of a real-life person and a tragedy and dealing with it through her daughter. And so, it's real stuff and real heart there, and that always relevant message of we can come together to do good.
I do want to say that I watched the episode. I was really busy actually that day, and so I had a lot of stuff going on. Yeah. And then I had at work, and then a meeting after work, and then I said to Kelly, I really want to watch this. It's going to be about an hour. Is there anything you need from me?
Right.
Because I don't want to do anything else once I get started. And I cried several times watching this episode, not just because of the emotional things that happen, but just because it's so cool to see some of these characters come back. David Yost in particular, who, like we said, got bullied off the set for being gay.
Right.
And he's just, so everything that happens to him and because of him, the character is that much more emotional because dude didn't have to come back for this at all.
Right.
In fact, some actors didn't. And that's, they don't have to.
Sure.
And they don't owe us an explanation as to why. But the ones who did really put some effort into it. And I really appreciated that. And then all the things that happened and why they're doing what they're doing. Yeah, when I got to the end of the episode, it really did feel like an episode 1. My guess is they're not, the plan wasn't necessarily to make this a whole thing, but it's getting really good reviews. Like it's getting like surprisingly good reviews for what is essentially a slightly higher budget episode of Power Rangers.
No, I would love if it, kind of reinvigorated interest in it and rebooted the series again. Though, like you said, they haven't actually ever stopped. They've continued to make it. There's another season going on, like right now, right? Or one just came out, or whatever it is.
Right.
So it's just like, I'm with all of that, but yeah. So
the next one that comes up is going to continue to follow the characters from Dino Fury, which just ended, and it's going to be Cosmic Fury, and they're going to remember how they changed powers from Mighty Morphin to Zeo.
Sure.
Right? So they're going to change powers from these dinosaur powers to these cosmic powers. The woman who played the Pink Ranger, the Pink Ranger character is going to be the Red Ranger for Cosmic Fury.
Right, I heard about that.
She's shifting from pink to red.
Yeah.
And it's going to be all new suits. Like they're not borrowing from Super Sentai this year for the suits and the fight footage. That's going to be all original because now Netflix is running it and like doing the production and stuff. So they're taking some risks and being bold and doing a thing. And since Netflix is also the ones who did Once and Always, maybe the young lady Trini's daughter might come back. Are they going to ask some of these actors to come back and do a thing? I
really hope so. Because like the other stuff that we talk about, maybe this is a particular, maybe we got to have this conversation sometime. Why are we drawn to these? But like comic books or Final Fantasy, and I particularly mentioned the X-Men, right? Power Rangers really can go on forever.
Oh, yeah. Or like Doctor Who, for that matter, or Star Trek.
Sure, right. Yes. Star Wars. These things can...
Absolutely.
Really, we can continue to tell stories in this world and with this lore and with using some of the same characters, but the new characters, always adding to, borrowing from. I want to use this part, but not that part. And yeah, I'm just really happy to see that it's not something that... in my mind, and it's mostly just it's one of those things, it's very American things. Like I stopped watching, therefore it stopped existing, right? Most of us grew up and grew out of it. First of all, there are still kids.
Right.
And second of all, I hope that it doesn't have to just be for the young audiences anymore. You don't, like you said, you don't make it for adults. You don't have them out there hacking people up. But I do feel like this reunion thing very much understood that, yes, there were going to be those of us who were adults who watched as kids who were going to be in on this. And it doesn't mean they pulled back off of the Power Ranger goofiness. It's all there.
No, it's still there. But Steve Cardenas and Catherine Sutherland and David Yost and Walter Jones are all in their late 40s, early 50s.
Right. There's just a more seriousness
look
about
like
them. Right. Well, right. They've lived their lives, right? And they carry with them the very meta, very real legacy of being Power Rangers. Like, that's what's kind of wild, is it's like,
yes.
I know that a Power Ranger isn't a real thing, folks. I know they don't really have superpowers, but that's the Blue Ranger and the Black Ranger. And that's just who they are, and that's who they were, and it's been so much of their identity and whatever else they've done in their lives. For some of us, that'll be a thing that and they'll always be that, right? It's kind of like for those of us that experienced, again, the 90s X-Men team. You're like, those are the X-Men.
Right.
It's like,
right.
Those are the ones. And yeah, they really bring a lot of weight and gravitas, believe it or not, to Power Rangers.
Well, and I'll tell you what, since you've only seen the first half of the episode, once you've seen the last fight, I want you to text me and see if to tell me whether or not you said holy shit at this one part.
Okay.
Because that last fight gets a little intense.
Yeah. I'll let you know. If I'm doing all right.
They don't knee anybody in the nuts, but
Well, if there's no kneeing in the nuts and throwing them into a comet, I'm not sure how it's going to hold up, but I'll give it a try, I guess. Look, they've set the bar, and now they've got to clear it. Okay.
oh goodness. I don't know, man. Any last thoughts? Go Power Rangers.
I'm out of thoughts. Go Power Rangers, indeed.
I'm a fan, and I'll tell you what. I really am just gonna watch through all the seasons I haven't seen yet, catch up, watch the comic books. I might be a Power Rangers fan again. I might be
awesome.
Really into it.
Awesome.